590 WKZO, Kalamazoo's Morning News. Halloween just around the corner. I go trick-or-treating, but I'm a little conspicuous. Now, I have a 6-year-old grandson that I could justify going out.
Right.
But, still. You don't like Snickers bars, Aiden? Okay, Grandpa will take it. But one of the things that this is, what we have Coast to Coast on, of course, in the morning. From midnight to 5 o'clock. And George covers this sometimes about paranormal activity in a home and, what you kind of can do about it. But we're going to take a different angle on this and talk to WMU Cooley Law School Professor Chris Trudeau, who's got some insight as to what do you do if you want to sell your home if you might have paranormal activity going on. Good morning, Chris. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about this from a legal standpoint. If you have issues like paranormal activity and somebody asks you that during a real estate transaction, are there laws that govern this?
Well, that specific scenario, when somebody asks you if there is paranormal activity or if there's been some type of suicide or other type of, violent, crime or act that happened in the house, you can't lie to them because that kind of implicates some of the fraud or the misrepresentation type of laws. But the more interesting question is, do you have to disclose it if nobody asks? So normally we think about a seller's disclosure statement where you have to disclose if we have a leaky roof or the foundation is cracked, and those are the physical defects of the house. But what about these situations where there's been some type of psychological defect in the house that really might impact somebody from feeling comfortable from living there? And that's really kind of the interesting thing to think about.
First thing that popped into my mind was the movie Poltergeist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a case from a couple of decades ago out in New York where it's called the Poltergeist case, where a businessman from New York had bought a house in Nyack, New York, and didn't know it had a history of being haunted, or at least being held out to be haunted, because it had been in Reader's Digest and those type of things. And so he was able to get the sale rescinded because the owner had held it out as being haunted and never disclosed it, and those type of things. Now, those type of cases don't come up all the time, but the cases with suicides or the violent crimes in houses and those type of things, they have come up, a lot more frequently, obviously.
Yeah, Chris, this is, I guess, if you're going to buy a home someplace, I'm not sure this is on a checklist someplace that, you go down the list, like you said, when was the last time the roof was repaired and have you had any foundation issues? And, oh, by the way, you have any paranormal activity in this place? But is this a possible question that maybe people need to ask when they're buying a house?
Well, it is quite possible. Actually, over 20 states have regulated this by the legislature. They've come up with statutes that said, certain states like Florida immunize or, make sure you're not liable by not disclosing this. They say, well, it doesn't matter if you disclose this or not. It's not material to the actual the housing structure. But other states like South Dakota take the opposite effect, that you have to disclose any type of, and they disclose what, or they lay out what you have to disclose, like if there was, a suicide or other type of death in the house and those type of things. So states have kind of dealt with this because it's something that has come up. In fact, Wright State University a few years back did a study about this with psychological defects in the house, as they're called, and those houses tend to sit on the market about 40%, 45% longer.
Yeah, I would guess so.
Yeah, and so it makes a difference, really, if you think about, kind of your comfort level in the house. So there is some precedent for that, for sure.
Wow. WMU Cooley Law Professor Chris Trudeau. It's amazing. This is not something that you would think about, but of course, being the time of year that it is, that there actually is legal precedent on the books. What is there any, because you were talking about Florida and South Dakota, is there anything on the statutes in the state of Michigan concerning this type of thing?
There isn't, and in over half the states, they just regulate it by the common law, and so the common law is something that's developed over time, where the legislature hasn't stepped in, and so historically it's been buyer beware or caveat emptor, that whole idea, but that's kind of changed over time, and so like in New York with the one case I was mentioning, which are common law states, it really is up to the circumstances. And so, the best thing I could recommend in Michigan is if you feel like this is a situation where, you're concerned about it, or if you were to buy a house and it happened to have one of these past events in it, you might want to ask about it, because they can't lie to you and that type of thing. But it is a gray area if you don't ask about it and they don't disclose it.
WMU Cooley Law Professor Chris Trudeau talking a little bit about laws of selling a home that might have paranormal activity. In this time of year, it kind of pops up a little bit. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it very much, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right. So that means, Tim, if your house is haunted, if people are, you got to tell them, kind of.
Yeah, the paint's a little faded, and the water heater's on the fritz. And I also have a lich in the basement.
Yeah, there's.
I don't know, for some odd reason, the song from Jumpin' Gene Simmons comes to mind. But
Yeah. Well,